Before we go into the nitty-gritty, the nuts and bolts of natural selection, let me give you a little bit of a bio of Charles Darwin. Charles Darwin was born on February 12, 1809, the same day, the same year, the exact same day and year as Abraham Lincoln, February 12, 1809. He was one of 5 children. His father, Robert Darwin, was a very, very famous physician. A number of males in the Darwin family were physicians, like his father and his grandfather and his actually older brother all went to medical school, so it seemed to be natural for the young Charles to go to medical school. And he was there for 2 years in Edinburgh and did dismally, was a very poor student. He was more interested in collecting beetles and hunting birds and sort of maybe a born naturalist. His father, rather much in disgust, decided, well, he'd pull him out of Edinburgh and put him into Cambridge University for religious studies, so he could be a country parson. This was actually a fallback situation for rich kids who needed to find a profession. But he finally managed to finish Edinburgh. But just at an opportune time, one of his good friends, Henslow, said, you know, Charles, there is a cartography boat for Beagle going around the world for many years, and they're looking for a gentleman companion. Maybe, possibly, you could do that. Darwin was interested. When Darwin's father, Robert Darwin, heard about that, he was tremendously against that and said, this is just another way of getting out of doing something useful, and you'll just bring further embarrassment to the family. But finally, Robert Darwin made the most wonderful mistake. He said, well, I would approve it if you could find one reasonable man to support you. I would consent to support you for this voyage. But it did turn out that Darwin's uncle, Josiah Wedgwood, was very supportive, and when he gave the support to Robert Darwin said, all right, and he consented to let his son do this. In the 1800s, the captain of any of these vessels, Her Majesty's ship, would not, by class, would not be able to communicate with anybody else who was not of his same class, and therefore would always dine alone. You needed to sort of have an intermediary. And so Captain Fitzroy, using his own money, was looking for a gentleman's companion. In 1831, at the age of 22, the young Charles Darwin applied for the job, and he got it. The 5 years, almost 5 years, that Charles Darwin was on the Beagle was probably the most interesting 5 years of his life. And he collected all these odd organisms that he found, and he shipped them all at home. And the more they came home, the more impressed were his colleagues, particularly his father, who still always considered his son a good-for-nothing. But now people called him up and says, you know, your son just made this wonderful find of this and that. And so for the first time ever, his father became proud of the young Charles Darwin. But what impressed Darwin more than anything else, and probably was the seed for his big idea, is that the diversity of life, no matter where he went, if he went to the Galapagos, as he did, he noticed in all the islands around, tremendous number of diversity of animals, in the air, on the beaches, underwater. He went to the rainforest, again, multitudes and multitudes of animals. He went to the desert, again, desert animals. He was just overwhelmed with the amount of life and the diversity of life. But he did not, while he was on the Beagle, say, aha, I've got this new theory of natural selection. But I believe, and many of my colleagues believe, that it did set the seed.